Thank you for joining us today. What a gorgeous day. A little less humidity, isn't that nice? And this is, if you haven't been to the Nature Center, the Carpenter Nature Center, this certainly is a beautiful facility. I want to remind you, if you could just mute your phones during the presentation. I always tend to forget to do that. And I want to thank a couple people first. Alan Maloney, who is just stepped out. He's here with the Nature Center. And I also want to thank Nate and his crew from the River Channel. They are recording this session today so that we can share it and educate others on the topics today. My name is Sue Curtis, and this is Bud Fuchs. And we're here as a representative of a group of some of the folks that are in the audience today. We started a new group in St. Croix County focused on environmental issues. We're really in our infancy, but I'd like everyone to raise their hand that's been at the first couple meetings of this group so far. Raise your hand so we can kind of get a sense that you can look around. They represent people from, the city of Hudson, the townships, and out in the country. So we're looking at the St. Croix County as a whole. So they're really the charter members. But we welcome all of you to join us. We're going to be meeting monthly, and we're going to focus on environmental issues, a variety of environmental issues. Water protection really has been our first priority. We've been noodling on a name. We don't have a name for ourselves yet, as we're kind of focusing on what we are. But Bud will share with really briefly what our belief statements are to see if you might want to join us.
We've been going through a few exercises to kind of define who we are and what we believe, and I just want to share briefly what we've come up with in terms of a draft statement and what we believe. We believe in clean air and water for all. We believe the climate crisis is a threat to the planet. We believe access to nature is important for personal and community health. We believe a healthy environment promotes a healthy economy. We believe government has a trust responsibility to ensure a healthy environment and conservation of natural resources, and that includes air and water. And we believe conservation should be nonpartisan. That's kind of a snapshot of how we started.
So we're focusing on the nonpartisan issue today in making sure that, hey, everyone cares about clean water and clean air. And as my hero, Virginia Drath, will say, when you turn on your faucet, it doesn't say Republican or Democrat, it says hot and cold, and it comes out water. So that's what we're here about. I am very excited to welcome Jennifer Williamson here from the Wisconsin Conservation Voters. This is her second trip to us in northern Wisconsin. Northern Wisconsin, we always kind of talk about how we get ignored up here from Madison. So we're very excited that she's been here. She has a very impressive background. She has a Bachelor of Science in Plant Health and Protection. She has a Master of Arts degree from Luther School of Theology in Chicago. She's been a volunteer with roles with Arise in Chicago and World of Hunger and other nonprofit organizations. She enjoys hiking, kayaking, travel, and gardening, like many of us, and enjoying the area here. She lives in the beautiful area of the Wisconsin Driftless. So let's give her a warm welcome, and thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for inviting me here. I'm really pleased to be here. I hope that Wisconsin Conservation Voters can be a resource to all of you as you organize and mobilize here in the St. Croix County and area to protect the water especially, and to lift up opportunities to protect the environment. So I'll be talking about what we do as Wisconsin Conservation Voters. I would love to hear kind of what interests you, what resonates with you, and we can hopefully generate some good ideas of ways to move forward and ways to take action. So I really wanted to start by asking all of you, what's your favorite place in Wisconsin? This is something that we do as a staff. All of us in our staff bios share our kind of favorite place, and I'd love to hear from all of you. Who would like to share? Yeah?
Kelly Creek Preserve,
Where's that?
County J. It's Kenny Connector Land Trust Preserve.
Nice, yeah. And what do you?
How many gallons of pure water does it?
750,000 gallons of water come out of the hillside spring.
Every day.
Wow, that's amazing.
Keeps that Kenny cold, clear.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Who else?
The Apostle Islands,
Uh-huh. Yes? What do you love about the Apostle Islands?
I sailed there, it's just a gorgeous place.
Wonderful. That was where we went for our family vacation this summer. I'd never been there before. It was gorgeous. Beautiful. Anybody else?
My backyard.
Yeah. What is it about your backyard?
Peaceful, low stress, flowers all over the place, the garden and the birds and the bear in the deer.
Bud?
Yeah, I'd have to say Willow River State Park, even though it's like right in our backyard, but it's some place where I've had just an incredible time, fantastic fishing in the past, and picnicking. It's where I taught my kids how to fish, and so I have been out there so much, I've got a lot of good memories from out there.
Beautiful. Anybody else like to share? Uh-huh.
On the Waterman Scenic State River.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any place with dark skies and it's ambient quiet.
Carrie, what were you going to say?
The St. Croix River.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's see, mine, the one that I have in my bio, it's very hard to choose, but Wyalusing State Park, one of our first camping trips as Wisconsinites, we went there with another family friend, and when we woke up, the mist was just hanging over the bluffs, and we could see the confluence of the two rivers, and it was beautiful. So that was one of those like, oh wow, I get to live here now. Amazing moments. So, your voice, your actions, and your vote hold power to protect these places. And so that's really our mission as Wisconsin conservation voters, is engaging voters to protect Wisconsin's environment. And so I wanted to share with you, so that's not just my voice and the voice of those in the room, but some additional voices about using our vote and protecting our waters and our environment.
The rice is very important to me, and the people that live here. That's why we come here, because the prophecy said that we were going to find a place when we moved from the east coast. We were going to find a place where food grows on water, and this is where we found it out, and we settled here.
For the Anishinaabe people and other tribal people, that the relationship that we have with the water is much more because it's a spiritual aspect.
Without the lake and the food or the wild rice that grew on the water, our people wouldn't be here and we wouldn't have survived.
It's ironic. I find it ironic that I spent all these years working with such an obscure material for basket making, and it's threatened. Its very existence is now threatened.
I believe that we have a responsibility to protect the land, to be stewards of the land, the water, and the sky. That's a heartfelt responsibility by tribal people. Conservation is an ethic that we believe in and have believed in that for hundreds, perhaps even thousands of years.
We honor this world, this land, and we honor the water. If it wasn't for water, what would you do? I mean, if you didn't have clean water, what would you do?
Yeah, indigenous cultures have always understood that we're part of the ecosystem and we rely on it. Without it, we wouldn't survive.
If we don't take the necessary steps to protect that, then we won't have our wild rice, we won't have our fish, we won't have the right to do that if we don't have people fighting for that.
There's warnings to people about not being able to swim in the lake because, again, there's poison that's in there at this point. And one of the ways that we can prevent some of that stuff is when things are going on, being able to utilize our voice, being able to be at the polls.
I mean, that's where you get a voice in the government, by voting.
If you vote for somebody who cares about the environment, who cares about these issues, who cares about the trees and the water, it's like that's where you can make a difference.
So a lot of the folks in the video that you just saw there are part of our Native Vote program, which works in tribal communities across the state. And we have had great success through that program in increasing voter participation. We've seen increases of 30, 40, 50, even over 100% turnout increases in the communities where we've been working. So we've been really, really pleased with that program. It's really grown. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do.
It's very important to me.
Nope.
And the people that live here.
Let's see. There we go. So what we do as Wisconsin conservation voters, we work to elect pro-conservation candidates. We work to hold elected leaders accountable, and we work to advocate for sound environmental laws and policies. And so our three priority issues that we focus on under our current strategic plan are clean water, clean energy, and democracy. And I'll talk a little bit more about each of those as we go through the presentation. But all of our work right now rolls into making real progress in the state on those key issues. So under clean water, clean water has been one of our top priority issues really for the entire time we've been an organization. We've worked on protecting the Great Lakes, and one of our accomplishments that we're most proud of was the enactment of the Great Lakes Compact. And that was a wonderful partnership between all the states that border the Great Lakes to protect the use of the waters in that system. We've worked on blocking harmful mining projects, and that was actually one of the events that led to the formation of the Native Vote program was our work with the Bad River tribe when there was significant concern about a mining project that was affecting the Bad River. And then currently, our big focus is on addressing contaminants in the water, particularly in drinking water, such as PFAS, nitrate, and lead. And so we'll talk a bit more about our work on PFAS, there's been a lot of action and activity this year on that issue. So I'd like to share, we'll do another video here, and I'll just play the sound through my computer again. This is one of our volunteers, Cindy. Cindy lives in Peshtigo, Wisconsin, which is a community that's been significantly impacted by PFAS pollution in their drinking water. So I'll let Cindy tell her story.
About 3 years ago, we found out that our community, Marinette, and the town of Peshtigo had a severe PFAS contamination issue in drinking water. And our home is the first property in the town of Peshtigo that abuts the city of Marinette, meaning we're on wells for our drinking water. So you start to pay attention very quickly when you realize that your water can be contaminated and your family could and very likely has been drinking poisoned water for a long time. The first thing that you think about are the health concerns, and PFAS has been linked to numerous health risks, everything from liver and kidneys to testicular cancer to thyroid disease to childhood development delays. I know that my thyroid was taken out in my mid-30s and it's directly linked to thyroid disease. I can't help but feel that there's a connection because my mother had kidney cancer, my dad had a brain tumor, my sister has thyroid disease, and I had my thyroid fully removed. And we'd been drinking, water right out of the spring-fed pond my entire childhood. So we hold our breath now because I watch our adult sons grow up and it alarms me. I worry about them, especially with respect to potential, testicular cancer issues. And we just watch holding our breath all the time. And I'm going to vote for Jonathan.
So we actually, this video that Cindy made, she did that in part of our campaign when we were working in that community to, we endorsed Jonathan Hansen in that race. And so Cindy was telling her story as part of our work, our electoral work. We endorse candidates and do door knocking and digital ads and mailers and kind of the whole suite of activity to help elect pro-conservation candidates. Did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. I will. Thank you. I will do that. Sorry about that. So I'm going to stop Cindy's video just a little early here since it's a little out of date now. So as I said, we've been working this year in particular on the issue of PFAS. Anyone familiar with the issue of PFAS? Anyone like to kind of summarize? Oh, my mic. Thank you. What do we know about PFAS in the room here? They never break down. They never break down. Forever chemicals.
Most of us have it.
What? I'm sorry?
It's in most people.
Right, yes, most of us have some level of PFAS in our bodies already, and they bioaccumulate, so they stick with us.
It's class B3 on a lot.
Oh, right. That's right. And so so a lot of the major contamination is tied back to manufacturing and firefighting foam are kind of the two major sources. But we also, in terms of where all of us acquire it, it's in paper products that have been coated to be nonstick cookware, carpeting. There's all kinds of products that have been infused with PFAS, and now we're really discovering the significant health risks. So elevated risks of cancer, of thyroid conditions, concern about the impact of the chemicals on our body's immune systems and ability to function properly with our immune systems. Testicular cancer are some of the major risks. Folks have been raising concern about PFAS for years here in Wisconsin. And for quite some time, we were seeing very little action at the state level on this issue. However, we've been working with a coalition of organizations across the state who have been raising and pushing this issue and trying to get meaningful action to protect people's drinking water. So one thing that we did was push for standards to be established, and in 2022 we successfully pushed for standards established for the DNR to establish standards related to PFAS for municipal water systems and for surface water. We were not successful in getting groundwater standards established at that time, but what resulted from getting those municipal water standards established was the testing that went along with it. And so over the past year, municipalities have been testing for PFAS, and you can see that over 120 Wisconsin communities have confirmed PFAS toxicity. So this data comes from the DNR, has an interactive PFAS data finder, and I can show that to you on our website later after this presentation if you'd like to know where the link is to find that. But that gives you up-to-date of the results of the testing that's been happening across the state. And so all of the blue points here are confirmed PFAS presence in municipal water systems. The orange ones are the highest risk, over the Wisconsin established standards. But an important thing to note is that after Wisconsin established its municipal standards, the EPA at a federal level has established or is proposing standards that are much stricter than the ones that Wisconsin has established. And so it's likely that the standards that we do have in place may not be even strict enough. So it's certainly a concern that we need to pay close attention to. So just to reiterate the mounting evidence of the concerns, health concerns related to PFAS. So cancer, liver damage, decreased fertility, increased risk of thyroid disease, growth, learning, and behavior impairment, interference with the body's natural hormones, decreased response to vaccines, and increased cholesterol levels. So those are all really significant health concerns that we need to be mindful of, and we need to get the PFAS out of the water, particularly for communities that have the highest levels. But we also need to eventually be working on the stopping it at the source and eliminating the sources of these chemicals. So this year, one of the programs that we do traditionally each year is Conservation Lobby Day. So this year, as we put together our Lobby Day, that's when we bring folks from across the state to come to Madison and talk with lawmakers about important environmental issues. This year, we raised 5 priorities that were proposed by Governor Evers in the state budget that were related to environmental concerns as well as democracy issues. And one of those was funding to address PFAS contamination. So what we were calling for was a community grants program that would provide the funding communities need to get the PFAS out of their water, so filtration systems. There might be various approaches, community by community. So one important piece of that was that we wanted that funding to be flexible. So not one size fits all, because every community, every water system might have a slightly different circumstance and approach that would be best for that community. So we really needed a significant amount of flexible funding to get out to communities to address PFAS in the water. So the governor's level of funding that we were asking for was $106 million. There was actually $125 million set aside for addressing the PFAS contamination issue by the legislature this year through the budget process. So that was a real win. However, not a penny of it can be spent until there is legislation established that directs how that funding goes out. So that's what we're working on right now. There's a bill, Senate Bill 312, that has been drafted, and there's a lot of good pieces in that bill, but there's a few problematic pieces as well. So we're working to push for Senate Bill 312 to address to provide flexible funding to communities without a polluter loophole. So that's the key issue that we're pushing on right now, is as drafted. Currently, there's wording in that bill that we think threatens the spills law, which is the DNR's authority to enforce action on chemical spills, on contamination spills. So we want to see that poison pill removed from the bill. We want a clean bill to get funding to communities who can't drink their water. It's an urgent issue, and so we need that funding to get out to communities to remedy immediate PFAS problems right away without any threats to the DNR's continued ability to maintain clean water for our state.
Is there a good way to treat water now to get the PFAS out?
Well, one example would be in the community of Wausau. Wausau is one of the communities that's had to deal with significant PFAS contamination, and what they have done is retrofitted their water treatment system, their water treatment plant, and so they had to make some major expensive improvements to remove the PFAS from their municipal water system. So that would be one example of how a city like Wausau had to handle it. There may be other methods, and I'm by no means an expert on other options and methods. Yeah.
Who's blocking the DNR's ability to, control this contamination?
The issue is that if Senate Bill 312 was enacted as is, there's wording in there that we and other environmental groups fear would limit the DNR's ability to do that. So there's some language around in what circumstances can the DNR go in and test for PFAS contamination. That's one example of some of the concern. It ties their hands a bit in being able to enforce cleanups when there's spills that take place. So I again am not particular issue expert, so I'd be happy to connect you with somebody who could speak in a little more detail on that. But that's the general concern, is the language that's gone in there that could tie the hands of the DNR a bit in addressing PFAS or other chemical spills, contamination.
Should we either save questions till the end, or because they weren't able to hear us, so you'd have to repeat the question?
Oh, right, I haven't been repeating the question. Yeah, sorry, I'll try to do that.
Either repeat it or save them till the end.
That sounds
would be
good.
fine, then we can pass the
Yeah,
microphone around.
anything else that folks want to ask right now, particularly on the PFAS issue? Yes.
I'm just wondering if there's any sort of simple test, like a blood test, that we can do on people very easily to find out about PFAS.
So the question is testing your own blood for PFAS. I believe there are tests. I don't know if that's something that your physician could order or do, or if that would be a specialty kind of situation. But I would say talk with your physician about that.
I think that if there were like a mobile testing unit that would go through communities and people were allowed to just be tested very simply, that we might get a consensus on the fact that this is a problem.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, so doing more testing in people to see who, the levels in our own blood. Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, people, but my understanding is Lake Elmo has a problem with PFAS, correct? And it's just across our river. And so if you want to inform yourself about what's going on during the year, that's a very serious issue over there.
Right. Do you want to repeat the comment? Sue's got the microphone.
Well, Lake Elmo has a serious issue with PFAS. Well, Woodbury, Lake Elmo, Stillwater have all been contaminated.
Yes. So it's definitely a widespread issue. Absolutely. So we would really like your help. You can go to conservationvoters.org/priority campaigns. That will take you right to the information and action alert links. So we have a form on our website that you can fill out to contact your representatives in the legislature and the state senate about this bill. So we would love for you to do that. If there's yes, so all you have to do is just go to the website and fill out that link, and that will register your comments. And there's talking points that are built into that form that go into a little bit more detail about the concern with the spills law in particular. So I just wanted to share an example, in addition to meeting with community groups like you, in addition to getting the word out to our members, we've also been doing some advertisements. So we've been doing a digital ad campaign focused on three state senators, who we believe could be really critical in making sure that the bill goes forward and removes that threat to the spills law. So we've been targeting these digital ads to the constituents of three different senators that are all in districts that are heavily impacted by PFAS, letting folks know that there is this poison pill in the PFAS bill and that we need that removed and a clean bill to go through to help communities. So the next issue I wanted to talk about a little bit is our clean energy work. So we are working on a target of 100% clean energy by 2050 or sooner. And so, that's our goal for the planet, really, but for our country and for our state and our municipalities. So we have been working with, we're affiliated with the League of Conservation Voters across the country. So there's 30 conservation groups like ours across the country who are working on the Clean Energy for All campaign and focused on this goal. And, we're actually making progress, so it's really encouraging. So in 2017, we, as the United States was being pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords, that was a huge setback. And so we had to retool a bit in that context. And at that time, just 1% of the US population lived in a place that was committed to 100% clean energy. Today, that's 40%, and that's a result of these local campaigns to push for clean energy. Then in 2022, we won the largest climate investment in US history. So part of the Inflation Reduction Act, and there's also important components through the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So we're talking about it comprehensively about the clean energy plan under President Joe Biden. So, here in Wisconsin, a few tools that led to that progress. One thing I wanted to highlight for you was this Clean Energy Toolkit. We published this in 2020, and a number of communities have been using this toolkit to figure out what's the pathway forward to make our community 100% carbon-free. So we have this available on our website, and if anyone would like to jump to that, I can give you a QR code so that you can jump right to that toolkit and learn more about the pathways to clean energy. The governor put together a clean energy task force, which led to, in 2022, our state's first ever clean energy plan. So our state is among those that are on the path to clean energy. So we're really excited about that, and there's just such huge potential. There's never been more resources available than there are right now for communities to make this switch. So it's never been more affordable. This is a huge, unique moment for communities to pursue, to make the switch to clean energy, to be able to, rather than sending billions of dollars out of state for our energy production, we can actually produce solar and wind energy here in Wisconsin. And so there's wonderful incentives for companies, for businesses, for homeowners to be able to make that switch. These are some of the communities across Wisconsin, and this is not a comprehensive list by any means, but some of the communities that have made local clean energy commitments. I won't read them all out loud, you can read them, but this is part of that transition. And so, it's really, there was a lot of coverage just in the past couple of weeks that you probably saw about the 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. And it's very encouraging how quickly the transition is happening, and we are approaching this inflection point where it's just becoming more and more affordable, and it's really moving forward. And so I find that incredibly encouraging. And then our third priority area is democracy. And so the reason that that's a priority area for us is because our mission is engaging voters to protect the environment. If voters don't have power in our government, we can't enact the policies that we need to see to protect our environment. So the actual functioning of our democracy is critical for our mission, for us to be able to do the work that we do. So one of the key pieces to that is the issue of fair voting maps. We believe Wisconsin voters deserve fair voting maps. Just recently, there's been a big update. There was a lawsuit filed under the group Law Forward, has filed a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of Wisconsin's heavily partisan gerrymandered maps. And so that means, as soon as next year, we possibly could have new voting maps here in Wisconsin. So that's a great opportunity. What we've seen, I wanted to show these charts, and maybe many of you have probably already seen them. So this is a chart, the red and blue, how Wisconsin voters have voted in the past decade or so. And so you can see it's pretty close, and there's been a few years where the red bar is above 50, there's quite a few years where the blue bar is above 50, but under the voting maps that we have, this is what representation looks like in our state assembly and state senate. And so you can see there's a huge discrepancy between how Wisconsinites vote and how they're represented in the state house. And so we believe that fair maps are a huge a huge step to remedying that, so that our, so that voters are choosing their representatives rather than elected leaders choosing their voters. Having a discrepancy like this has led to increased polarization and partisanship. So we really believe that with fair maps, that will lead to, a better representation in terms of, who's representing the people of Wisconsin in the state capital, as well as, reducing some of that extremism and partisanship that we see right now. So that leads me to talk about our sister organization, Wisconsin Conservation Voices. So we actually have Wisconsin Conservation Voters is a 501c4 organization, which means that we do lobbying work and electoral work. Wisconsin Conservation Voices is our educational arm. So Wisconsin Conservation Voices is a 501c3 sister organization. We focus on education, advocacy, nonpartisan voter participation techniques, and the Wisconsin Native Vote Program is run under Wisconsin Conservation Voices. So you heard some of these voices earlier in the presentation, but I'd like to share a little bit more about the Native Vote Program.
I think that exercising our right to vote is an original form of exercising our individual sovereignty and collective sovereignty as Indigenous communities. And it's our way of voicing, but not only reminding people that we're still here, we're still very much alive, and we're still very much thriving.
As an Indigenous person, I vote because it's critical to our democracy, and it is something that our ancestors were not able to do a short 100 years ago.
I mean, that's where you get a voice in the government, by voting.
Yeah, in 2011, there was an open pit mine slated for the Pinocchio Mountains up in northern Wisconsin, which is the recharge water area for my reservation home. Wisconsin Conservation Voices came in, they partnered with our tribe, helped our people and other local residents become educated on conservation issues. They helped educate citizens on who legislative leaders were that were sympathetic, that were wanting to stand up for the lands and waters and ecosystems, and they're excellent partners that helped us to have our voices heard.
I'm a First Nations organizer for Wisconsin Conservation Voices. And I also have a responsibility as manager for Wisconsin Native Vote to work with people in the communities, to encourage them to participate in the voting process, and also to engage them in the causes that we believe in.
I think it's super important that we educate our people about how important it is to vote and the power of voting, and that your voice does make a difference, that you matter, and that what you do makes an impact on your community.
There was record numbers of Native voters throughout the United States, and it was because of efforts of people convincing and supporting and advocating about the importance of what it means to vote, and that every vote does really count.
My grandfather, when he was born, he wasn't a U.S. citizen. It wasn't until 1924 that Indians were given citizenship through the Indian Citizenship Act. And that's when he was given the right to vote. Even though he had fought for the country, he still wasn't allowed to vote.
I vote because voting is sacred, and it's a way to honor my ancestors and to participate in democracy. It's also an opportunity to choose who represents me and who is like me, who hears me, who sees me, and who is me.
That's what you vote for them, for the leadership to represent you and other people.
You vote with your dollars and you vote at the polls. There's more than one way to vote. And so what are you doing?
The importance of ensuring your future generations is by casting that vote.
We vote for our ancestors and what they stood for, and then I want my children to know that so that they teach their children what's important and why it's important that we vote.
being able to utilize our voice, being able to be at the polls. Voting does really make a difference.
I feel if I can leave a little bit for my kids and my grandchildren and the future of the young people, then I feel I've done my job.
And as was shared in the video, and as I mentioned earlier, this program has led to really significant increases in voter participation. And one of the, I was going to say one of the exciting things, one of the important things is, we're still seeing and encountering irregularities in voter participation in polling locations. So we've had, we've experienced situations where folks were told, you're not registered, you need to re-register, even though, that wasn't the case. And so we've been able to advocate with communities in that case. We're also finding, some difficulties with the online voter registration in the state of Wisconsin, that tribal addresses are not always showing up in the online database. And so that means that the database doesn't work for folks if their address is not showing up in the database. So we're working to rectify that and find some ways to improve that system to make sure that it's as easy as possible for everyone who's eligible to register to vote and to participate. And so then I wanted to share a bit about what the benefits of membership are for the members of Wisconsin Conservation Voters. One important thing that we do is vote tracker. So you can go to our website and you can follow along with bills as they move through the legislative process in the state capitol. And so if there's a particular bill you're concerned about, you can follow that. You can check and see how your own representatives and state senators have been voting on important environmental legislation. And then at the end of the session, that all rolls up into our conservation scorecard. So members receive this scorecard in the mail, and it's a summary of the full legislative session and how every member of the state legislature voted on environmental and democracy issues throughout the session. And our tagline for our conservation scorecard is, before you vote, know the score. Do the research and find out how your representatives have been voting on the issues that you care about. We also send out our member newsletter to all our members, and so you all have a couple of issues of that on your chair. If anybody didn't get one, I've got more at the table here. But that summarizes some of the really inspiring stories and activities and actions and victories that we see throughout the year. We get those out and tell you all about them and provide ways to continue to be involved, make sure that you're up to date on the issues. We do, as I mentioned, election endorsements. So when election season rolls around, check out our website, conservationvoters.org/elections. We endorse candidates up and down the ballot. So, from the governor's race to the AG race, down to even, school boards, county boards. We have a process where candidates can request our endorsement. We have a questionnaire. Our board vets each and every candidate seeking our endorsement. We do interviews, and only the candidates who earn your seal of endorsement as conservation voters are endorsed in that process. So you can check out the full list of endorsements in both the spring elections as well as fall elections. And we have lots of volunteer opportunities. We'd love for you to participate. You can go to conservationvoters.org/sign up, and that's where you can sign up for our emails, as well as then get updates on when there's issues that we need to be contacting our elected leaders about, when there's an opportunity to go to Conservation Lobby Day, when there's volunteer opportunities during elections. We do postcard writing, we do text banking, phone banking, door knocking, and we need as many people as possible helping us out with those programs. So it's really, it's the members, it's the voters that make all of this happen. And so as we talked about, Wisconsin's an extraordinary place. There's so many places that are dear to us that we want to protect. And this is one way that we do that, is using our voice, our actions, and our vote to protect Wisconsin's air, land, water, and public health. And we do that not only for us today, but for future generations. We want these lands, these waters, we want a livable climate for our children and for our grandchildren. So I would love for each and every one of you, if you would be so kind as to become a member of Wisconsin Conservation Voters. You'll join with 40,000 other people who are activists and donors to our organization. And a really great place to start would be with a monthly gift. There's important work that has to happen, not just in election season, but all year round, to make sure that voters are educated, make sure that there's an eye on the Capitol, holding our elected leaders to account, and then making sure that when it is election time that we have the people power to go out there and get good people elected to office who will stand up and protect the environment. So, we need your help to do that. So I would love for each and every one of you to consider becoming a monthly donor. We'd really appreciate it. So thank you so much. I would love to take any questions, any comments. Yes?
A few slides back, you listed several counties. Several counties that were projecting that they'd be PFAS free or whatever it was.
Oh, that was on our clean energy policies.
Yeah. How did they get started on deciding they were going to do that? Do you have lobbyists from conservation voters that go to counties and talk to them?
Yeah.
Do you go to township association meetings too to talk to the people?
Yeah, so the question is, how do these movements take place? So there was a question about, do we have lobbyists? We do have lobbyists. Our lobbyists focus their work in the state capitol. So they're there in Madison, meeting with all the legislators and educating them on the issues and the reasons why their vote for or against a particular bill is important to the environment. But we also have organizers who go out across the state and work with local communities. So your question about those communities that have clean energy policies, that's one of the projects that we're working on. So right now, just to give you an example, in Stevens Point, somebody had a Stevens Point relative, yeah. In Stevens Point just kicked off their clean energy campaign. And so we have an organizer on the ground. His name is Maxwell. He's a graduate of UW Stevens Point, and now he's working full-time on organizing the community to adopt a clean energy plan. So he's working with their city council, with their mayor, and with residents of the city to push for a clean energy plan to be adopted. And along with that, a key component is making sure that there is a dedicated staff person on the employed by the city to push that forward. So as we've worked with and learned from communities who have implemented sustainability and clean energy plans, that's such a huge component, is making sure that there is some staff dedicated to advancing that plan. Because it does take time. It takes time to research and figure out, how do we reduce our energy use? How do we electrify? How do we identify where the biggest gains can be made? How do we get grants to be able to afford to do all of this? How do we get resources out to homeowners to make it affordable for them? So that takes time, and so part of any successful sustainability plan, in our view, needs to have staff resources as well. So that's what we're pushing for in Stevens Point. Bud?
How are the cities and the counties funding a staff person that they have to work on clean energy? Are they getting grants, or is there some other way?
There are all kinds of grants and incentives that are available for different aspects. I myself am not super knowledgeable about the details of those, but there's a lot of good resources. MREA is a great resource. We work with them closely. They have a lot of information.
What's MREA?
MREA is Midwest, what's the R? Environmental Advocates. Renewable. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, so, but I think it's mrea.org, and they have tons of information on exactly that, where communities and individuals can come up with the resources to switch to clean and renewable energy. Yes?
I've talked with friends, and we talk about, as far as like electric cars, how they sound great, and then we also remember that you have to mine really rare metals, and that threatens water. Have you figured out a position on electric power or electric cars?
Well, you know, we're all for electrification, but the mining concerns are significant. And so, you know, in terms of what we're working on here in Wisconsin is less on the mining issues and more on the practicalities of switching off of fossil fuels to electrification through wind power and solar power. Yeah, so that's kind of more of our focus. So I don't have an exact answer for you on the mining concerns, although I do recognize that that is a concern. Yeah. Yeah, Claude.
Are you able to reach all the counties?
Well, we do work statewide, and so we have members, you know, we welcome members from anywhere across the state. In terms of where we have organizers on the ground, we have Madison, Milwaukee, Green Bay, Appleton, Bayfield, Stevens Point is where we've got staff currently. But if we can get the resources pulled together through member donations and other resources, we would love to expand that. So we have in the past had a Western Wisconsin organizer. We don't have someone out here full-time right now.
Is there much county interaction? Are you able to reach?
Working with counties?
Yeah, at the county level?
Well, so a number of counties do have like clean energy plans. So I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean by working with the counties, but we we have worked with county level like clean energy plans and campaigns. Is that what you're getting at? Okay. Yep. Yeah. Just talk into it. If you hold it up, then I'll hear your question.
In St. Croix County, it seems like we've got a big a water quality issue. And it seems like somebody down in Madison controls the DNR, ties their hands, and doesn't let them do the job they're supposed to do up here. Who is doing that? Who is the one or two that have the power over the DNR?
Well, you know, I think in a large part it comes down to who's sitting on the DNR board. So Governor Evers has appointed several great people to the board. We are eagerly anticipating their confirmation. So we're really looking forward to that. I think they're, you know, as you know, new folks do come on to the board, you know, I'm hopeful that we will see improved decision-making coming out of the board as well.
Are there any politicians that are directly involved in this?
Well, there probably are. I don't know the answer for you directly, but I'd be happy to connect you. Probably the best people on our staff would be our government affairs team. So those are the folks that, you know, we talked about who are our registered lobbyists in the Capitol, but they are our key liaisons to, you know, all the governmental bodies that relate to environmental protection. So that's who I'd refer you to, is to connect with them to kind of get into the nitty-gritty politics of it. Yeah. Yes. Oh.
I was just going to make a plug that there have been people nominated by Tony for the Natural Resource Board for 6 months, 8 months, year and a half. I'm not sure now that the legislature has not voted to confirm them. So the guys were on the Natural Resource Board whose terms were over about a year and a half, and the legislature hasn't moved to confirm the person that Tony had nominated a year and a half ago. So that's part of the reason why the Natural Resource Board isn't doing it.
There's a question in the back.
I noticed that you had nitrates as a contamination problem, and I was just wondering what kinds of legislation you have proposed to try to control nitrates. I've read the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's reports on Wisconsin, particularly the St. Croix River and our groundwater, and 80% of the nitrates comes from farms, and yet there is virtually no regulation of farm contamination of our groundwater. Is there anything proposed? There's a freedom to farm, but not a freedom to pollute from your farm. I just would like to know if there's anything we can do at this time, because St. Croix County's groundwater, pretty much everybody's well is contaminated above 10 parts per million at this point in time. Super serious. I work with farmers, in conservation, but it's not being taken care of.
Yeah, so I think probably our most powerful tool for getting stronger legislation around nitrate contamination, is going to flow out of having fair maps, having stronger water quality advocates who are in office, who set those laws, who legislate on those issues. We also, it's really important that the DNR has the resources it needs and that it's empowered to do the work that it needs to do to monitor water quality and respond when there's issues and prevent contamination and spills, and help farmers put in policies, put in protocols and projects that reduce runoff. Yeah.
I think there's been so much monitoring. I'm monitored to death nowadays. The DNR, everybody wants to monitor. Monitoring doesn't do us any good if the practices never get put in to actually limit it. So, we've monitored nitrates for the last 50 years in Wisconsin, and it just, nothing ever happens. And they just say, oh, well, the levels are way too high, and you're all getting cancer from it, but we can't do anything.
Right, and so farmers need the resources too to be able to prevent runoff and do plantings that can prevent runoff and make sure that there's not potential for spills and things like that. Yeah. Well, oh yes, Sue.
I have a comment on that too. One of the things that we can do individually is attend our town board meetings, our village meetings, and our city meetings, and advocate and ask the questions about who is monitoring our water and share our information with them. And that's the power of this group and the power of everyone. So we can't always leave it up to our folks that have many other things on their plate at the legislature, but it's up to us to make the changes that are necessary by letting our voice be known.
And just to add to that, I think if you support local groups that are involved in conservation, that's another way to do it. Kitty River Land Trust, Carpenter Nature Center, TPE, the Prairie Enthusiasts, Friends of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Being involved there is local and it's effective. It's at least something you have some control over.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that's,
so when
that's
you're
a
frustrated with your legislator, go out and support these groups.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a really great transition. I hope that we as Wisconsin conservation voters can be a great resource for you on state level work and sharing sharing resources and sharing examples from across the state of what folks are doing locally. And Sue, Bud, anyone else here who wants to speak a little bit about opportunities locally, I think that would be a great opportunity. So, I'm really grateful for your time. Would really appreciate you joining with us as a member of Wisconsin Conservation Voters, but also really encourage you to join with this group that's forming. And yeah, Sue, if you want to speak a bit more about kind of your next steps.
Well, thank you. Let's give Jennifer a big hand. So you've been hearing a lot lately about clean water, and we have another group, Emerald Clean Water for All, that will be having a September 28th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at Riverwood Nature Center. That's another nature center that we can support, and thank you so much for your comment on that. That's how we can support our folks. And there'll be more information that you'll see start spreading around on social media. Are there other things that are happening that people would like to share about? Things that people can get involved in?
We can talk about that.
Nice and loud.
I don't know if you're aware of that manure digester. I think I've seen a couple of people at this meeting. It was turned down, it was withdrawn, that permit was withdrawn at New Richmond, but they have selected other cities within St. Croix County that these could potentially be built on. So you gotta really get on this, okay? This is, I don't know how they're gonna get rid of the waste, because especially in New Richmond, that's in a restricted zone up there for water quality. And there's other parts of the state or the county are just like that. So you all gotta be aware that other things going on in the county, such as this digester. They're talking Prescott, Glenwood City, where they tried one in Roberts, that got shot down. But I just want you to be aware of that. So you talk about pollution, nitrates and stuff. This is gonna, because they're bringing in waste from other cities. It's not just St. Croix County, okay? This is, and the farmers of St. Croix County. This is 3 counties of it's coming from, okay? And Barron, the turkey stores, so.
Yeah, so thank you. Just being aware of what's happening in your township, what other companies are coming in. We can look back to 30, 20 years ago, right? And that's why we have PFAS issues in some of our communities, because we didn't know. So just being aware of that. So other questions, please feel free to join our group and come. Again, we want to focus on a variety of issues, and it'll be local, and we won't be focusing on many of the voting issues. It'll be more about specific issues in your community, like a digester or other things that would matter to everybody. Question?
Is there a organization to protect the Willow River down in through St. Croix County? The
question is there an organization to protect the Willow River? We know we have the Friends of the Willow River Park and Kinnickinnick, but I don't know if there's like a watershed group or any group. Does anyone know of anyone offhand that?
There was a Upper Willow River Rehabilitation District, which is designed to collect taxes from homeowners and farmers in the Upper St. Croix, the watershed upstream of this New Richmond. And I understand that that's being considered right now to reenact that, because no property owners have been paying taxes for the last like 15 years, 20 years. It was a line item on Ruth and my property tax bill, but we never had to pay taxes into it. They're looking at reestablishing that to help reduce non-point source pollution into the Willow River. I don't know the status of that, Rick.
Because down our area, the Willow is just a sewer system with 2 settling ponds, one by the state park and one in Malibu. That's all it is.
Right.
Thank you.
No, it's just calling the conservation department of the county, land conservation department. They might have some information for you, because that Willow River is part of this, New Richmond, that whole district there for the maximum load, TDL they call that, on the amount of nutrients that go in there. And the county has got some stuff on that they could give you resources for.
What's the name of the county?
St. Croix County Land Conservation Department.
Conservation.
Land Conservation Department.
Fish and Wildlife Service, it's a wetland conservation priority area. So there's that private lands, Fish and Wildlife Service office on 85th, I think, maybe 95th, coming south of 64. And they do a lot of conservation work on private lands as well as public lands and waterfowl production areas and stuff. So they may have some answers for you too.
I think there's a Lake Malibu Homeowners Association also that is very concerned about this issue as well, because of course it's affecting Lake Malibu and then is affecting the St. Croix too. But those people are, it is a very mixed group of people, nonpartisan, and it's just, that lake is just a mess. So they live on that lake and they are understanding now where that's coming from. So that might be an important organization to work with and get behind too.
So just connecting, like I said earlier, with the groups that are out there. Oftentimes I know there's the fly fishing associations that work with the Willow, the Kinnickinnick, all of that. So it's connecting with all of those organizations. Let your voice be known and communicate your concern. And yep, you might have to help out and volunteer a little bit to get things going.
And I think we've talked about this a little bit in our new group. But, it's really important, obviously, not to point fingers and say it's the farmers, it's the farms, it's the runoff. It's important for us to all gather together and let them have a voice and we have a voice. For years I've been thinking about how you could involve schools with farmers in building gardens that would help with the runoff. There's so much opportunity with this issue. And even involving the arts. I've talked to Anastasia Sharton when she was at the FIPS, just to have a really interesting, rich conversation about how we can all solve it together. So that's kind of a key, I think, to this type of thing.
I think about that every time I go into my own garden and want to put nitrate or nitrogen on my flowers, and I think about that and how that's going into my groundwater too. So it really starts with our landowners and what we do on our own properties. Anything else that we'd like to share?
I just wanted to ask if anybody here is interested in helping me with wildlife advocacy work. I could really use help, support, because wildlife is not really an issue with this organization, and I'm a little sad about that because I was hoping that it was going to involve wildlife, but I could really use help with wildlife advocacy for St. Croix County. I put some resolutions in. Linda Hendricks is my name. You might have seen them on the WCC Spring Survey. And they just rejected the coyote one, saying that they are still going to continue to hunt them 365 days a year, 24/7. And I assume that the killing contest one was rejected by the WCC. There's a group called Our Wisconsin Revolution that is trying to get a petition going to try and deny funding for the WCC because they're so undemocratic. But anyway, if you know anybody, please talk to me because I could really use some help with wildlife.
So there's an individual who's been very active in trying to protect the wildlife in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate that, and for all I know what you're doing individually, your other groups. Many of you are involved in bees and birds and land trusts and all kinds of things. So thank you for all your work.